Good morning, internets. It is a weird and rainy day here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that is making the freeway just be a crawl, and nobody wants to let you merge when that happens. It is 61 degrees this morning, and I started out the day with 36 miles in the battery-only range in the 2012 Chevy Volt Premium for those of you keeping score at home, and thank you so much for everybody sharing your data with me in the comments down below about how your cars are doing in your various climates. I really appreciate that, and I've learned a lot. I want to talk to you guys today about something a lot less happy than I normally do, and that is the tragedy with the self-driving Uber car striking and killing a cyclist. This is a really terrible thing, and I want to examine it from more than one angle, because the way that I'm seeing the media report it is a little puzzling to me, because they are reporting it as though it is entirely the fault of the self-driving vehicle. It is entirely the fault of the programmers, the people who designed it, of the engineers, and that there's something wrong or at fault with the technology itself, rather than anybody else's fault. If you look at the footage, and the footage has been everywhere, there's the dash cam footage of the cyclist stepping out into the road and being struck. Like, they cut the footage, and thankfully, they cut the footage the instant before the cyclist is struck by the front bumper. And when you look at that footage at night, you only see, they show it all the way up until the moment that you see the cyclist. You only see the cyclist for half a second. She was not in a crosswalk or a designated crossing area. She wasn't in a bicycle lane. She was jaywalking and crossing the street. Now, in the state of Nevada, pedestrians always have the right of way, whether they're in a crosswalk or not. But when they're not in a crosswalk, if they're just out in an intersection or they're out in the middle of the street and accidents do happen, that is a consideration that our law enforcement agencies make here for that. So that's a factor there. And I don't want to sound like I'm coming out too strongly in defense of this self-driving Uber car. What I think somebody's definitely at fault here, and it's probably a couple of different people. One, the cyclist not being in a designated crossing area, really, I mean, obviously that was a fatal mistake for her. And that's just so awful. Just bad judgment for just a second. And, you know, she could have made all good decisions the rest of the day, hell, the rest of her life right up until that moment. And becoming complacent in a moment when you're out on the road around cars, that's just something everybody needs to be aware of all the time, that a moment of complacency, it's the difference between life and death. And in this case, it really happened to be. And I'm deeply saddened by that for that woman and her family. I'm very sorry that happened. Second to that, so that we have the responsibility on the part of the cyclist. Second to that, there's also, there was a human person inside of this self-driving vehicle that was supposed to be monitoring the safety program, and it was supposed to be monitoring the self-driving program, and you know, keeping track of what was happening. And they show, there's dash cam footage of the camera pointed at the driver, and the driver has their hand out to the side, out of frame, and is looking over and looking down. Now, I'm not going to do that motion right now because I'm actually driving, and I keep my eyes on the road. But when you see a person, and you've all seen them, some of you have been guilty of being this person, but when you see a person with their hand out to the side, and they turn their head and they look down, what assumption do you make about that person? They're on their phone. People do that when they're actually driving vehicles. They cannot help themselves. And I'm not making an excuse for those people, but people are like, oh, I was just checking a text message real quick, or I was just checking Twitter real quick, or I just got a Facebook alert real quick. Real quick is all it takes. Ask the cyclist. This person was supposed to be there as a backup to stop the vehicle in the event of an emergency, and failed to do that because they were looking at their phone. They didn't have their eyes on the road. They weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And that again, that's another moment of complacency. So these two complacent moments co-conspired to take the life of this one person. But the way the news is reporting it is that the self-driving car is entirely at fault. Now, that having been said, I like the idea of technology which allows a vehicle to stop before it kills somebody. That in my mind is good technology. And in my previous video, which I'll link at the end of this one, this isn't the first time I've talked about self-driving cars. Somebody asked me what I thought about self-driving cars, and I'll make sure to throw it up at the end of this video here. But one of the, I'm very, very torn when it comes to self-driving cars. I like to be in control of my own vehicle. Right now, I am in control of my vehicle as we all creep up the highway on our morning commute. And I'm the one in charge of my car and what it is doing. And I don't like trusting a robot or a computer program to do that better than I do. Now, that having been said, I believe that that is strongly influenced, if not entirely created, by my own ego. Because I have this sense, this instinct that I am somehow better at this than a machine could ever be. And even if the machines aren't there yet, I have no doubt in my mind they will be in the very near future. A computer can react faster than I can. A computer can react faster than any of us can. That's why we have computers. They can calculate things faster, and they can come up with the things to do faster without emotion in the way, without having that moment of terror. They don't experience fear, so they don't experience hesitation. And I think those are very important things to consider when we're looking at self-driving vehicles. People hesitate and people make mistakes. Now, in this case, the machine is only as good as the people programming it. The machine is only as good as the technology we have available to build it and to make it realize its final vision. And if the technology isn't there yet, then the technology isn't there yet, and I would understand that. However, in this specific instance, the way I'm watching the news media, particularly CBS, reporting on it, it's as though the entire fault of, like, they are selling it as though a self-driving car took off on its own and murdered a human being. Like, that's the way they're selling it. Now, obviously, they're trying to get ratings out of that, but I don't think that that's a very productive thing to do in this instance. There's two actual human beings to be held responsible for this. There's the person who took their bicycle out into the middle of the street, not in a designated crosswalk, not in a designated stopping area, just crossing the road. And then there's the person on the inside of the vehicle who was supposed to be monitoring all of the safety protocols and was supposed to stop the vehicle in the event of an emergency, who wasn't looking at the road, they were looking down. Now, those two people are there to be held responsible, and yet the media is just holding the vehicle responsible and Uber. Uber's done a lot of hinky and sketchy things in the last several years. There's been lots and lots of reports of Uber did this and Uber did that have been not so great, especially here in Las Vegas. But in this case, I don't know that Uber is necessarily at fault, and I'm having a hard time forming a solid opinion about this because it's very confusing and it's very new. There's not been a situation like this before, so it's very difficult to know where to point fingers. And unfortunately, when somebody dies, we do look for someone to blame, and we do look for someone to be held responsible and to be held accountable to that woman who lost her life and her family and to those that lost her. But I don't know where that blame lies, and I really want to know what you guys think. Do you think the media is reporting this fairly, number one? Do you think this car just took off on its own and killed this person? And do you believe that the person on the inside of the vehicle was at fault and had any blame to bear at all in the situation? I'm really interested in that because it's very confusing to me. The whole point of having the person inside the car is that, okay, we're testing these things. We know that they're not safe enough for the road yet. We know that they're not ready to be out on their own and completely autonomous. We know that. Which is why we had a person there monitoring it to watch it, and that person failed to do their job. And then here's the last thing. If you're unable to go look because you find the image is disturbing, I understand and I respect it. If you happen to have seen the footage that they have been showing, that has been going round and round around the news cycle this morning, if you happen to have seen it, where you see the instant that the woman enters the headlights and they cut the footage right before you hit her, it's less than half a second. Could you yourself, if you had your eyes on the road, going the speed limit and hovering over the brake, do you think you could have avoided hitting this person? I really want to know that because I was looking at the footage and I had a question about whether or not I could personally avoid hitting that woman. Now, I think if the person, and this is just my speculation at this point, please do not take this as gospel, but I think that the person behind the wheel, that they had monitoring it, if they had been doing their job, they might have been able to get to the brake soon enough to maybe prevent an all-out fatality. But I still think the woman would at the very least have been severely injured with the way that she darted out in front of a car. It's very sketchy to me. I really want to know what you guys think. I mean, honestly, put yourself in that situation. If you were doing all of the right things, if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing, what had been asked of you by your superiors, if you were in that situation and you were supposed to be monitoring that self-driving car, would you be texting? Would you be off and distracted, or would you have your eyes on the road? I'd like to think I would have my eyes on the road, because, well, that's just how I drive. But also, I think I would have a heightened sense of awareness and alertness in that self-driving vehicle. I'd be a little nervous because I know I'm in a test vehicle. I don't know. I don't know, guys. I really want to know what you guys have to think. And I know that this is a bummer story, but it's one that's very important because this is a thing that they're talking about making part of our future. And we already have elements of this available to us as consumers with Tesla's. Tesla has the autonomous feature in some of their cars where you still need to sit there and monitor the vehicle, but you can set the cruise control and the thing will keep lanes if you just hit your turn signal. This is an option, it's not standard, but if you just hit your turn signal, it'll make a lane change. All of the radar and sonar and probably wizardry at this point, because I just don't understand the computer technology that well. But anyway, it will take it upon itself to make that maneuver for you and do it safely. It'll speed up and slow down to keep pace with the car in front of it and the car behind it. We already have, these are elements that are already on our roads. You're already out, and the number of Teslas that I see out here, I know that I'm already keeping company. I'm already sharing the road with some people who have some autonomous features on their cars. Even companies like Honda and Chevy and Ford have cars that have brake assist, where if you're not paying attention and there's an obstacle in the middle of the road, they will, the car will brake and slow itself down without your consent to prevent an accident from happening. Like, we have these safety features available on cars now, but they're becoming more and more and more autonomous. We have cars that park themselves. I know that that's a very small thing. Wow, big bus. I realize that that's not the same thing as a self-driving car that does the entire trip by itself, but those are the elements that are already present on our roads. This is the direction the technology is moving, and those things have to be tested in some way. I'm already sharing the road with those people, so this is something that's going to come up more and more. I know that we're all going to have to form more detailed and more specific and hopefully better informed opinions about this subject matter. The last video I made was it was a little comical about self-driving because it was still just theory at that point. But I am torn. I like being in charge of my own vehicle, but at the same time, there are a lot of people, and I don't mean this in an unkind way, dudes. This is just statistics, and we all know them. And road rage aside, you were on the road with idiots. That there are maybe 10% of the population that really, really knows what they're doing behind the wheel. Like, really has strong driving experience, and it takes years and years and years and years to be a good driver and a desire to be a good driver. I'm not talking about a good vehicle operator. I think that I am a fine vehicle operator, but I spend a lot of time in the company of drivers, real drivers who have experience and education and training that I do not possess, and that's a different class of person. Like, those people are trained to avoid I'm never going to be as good a driver as somebody who's gone through defensive and offensive driver training, like our police officers have, or some of the military driving maneuvers, or even some of the race schools we have out here. Those are experiences that I don't have. At this point, I'm just an equipment operator, and so we know that. And I really, really care about how well I drive, and I'm always doing the speed limit and stuff, and I realize that I'm in the minority on that. I do. We see people doing idiot maneuvers all the time. So on the one hand, while I like myself being in charge of my vehicle, there's been a Hyundai Sonata up here that's been weaving in and out of traffic. I'm literally looking at it right now and zooming up and getting really close to the car in front of them and then slamming on the brakes. Like, that person's gonna cause an accident probably sometime today. That's probably going to happen with this Sonata. That person I would like to put in a self-driving vehicle. I don't know that I want that person driving their own car. They clearly can't do it well. So I'm extremely torn on this subject. And since we talk about electric cars on this channel, and I've been talking, like, we live in the future. We live in the future tense, and we're trying to bring that future into reality, by reducing emissions, by finding different methods of propulsion, by finding different ways to solve transportation problems. And those are all topics of conversation here. And the self-driving thing is not going to go away. And I really want to know what you guys think. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. So despite the bad news this morning and despite the bad weather, I want everybody to try your best to have a really good day. Today is Thursday. We are almost to the weekend, guys. We're almost there. And I'm going to do my best to make it a better day, albeit a thoughtful one. And that having been said, if you found this post interesting today, thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing right over here. Here's some other videos I think you'll enjoy. Scratch that. Here's my other video about self-driving cars right down here. My name is Catherine with EVs of Nevada, and even if it's a bad day, please remember to like, subscribe, and smile. We need the smiles on bad days.